Everything I've shown you so far will work in Chrome, Safari, and Firefox. However, there are a few more things to learn about the border radius property. But don't worry, I'll point out the browser compatibility issues along the way. With that said, there is an alternative shorthand syntax that we can use to target individual corners. If we use the border radius property on its own, and then type in 4 consecutive values separated by spaces, we can target the corners in a clockwise order, starting with the upper left corner. Now, if we refresh the browser, we can see that each one of these corners has a slightly different curvature applied to it. It's very important to point out here that this only works in Chrome and Firefox, but it does not currently work in Safari. And just so you can see, here's how it works in Firefox, just as you'd expect. Just copy and paste there, and I'll flip over to Firefox, and it looks just like that. Now, what I've shown you so far will work just fine if you want your borders to be perfectly round. However, we can take things a step further and create corners that have an oval or an oblong shape to them. To do this, I'll delete what we have so far here, and we'll type WebKit border radius, and we'll put 2 values into the border radius property. And then we'll separate those 2 values with a slash. And the syntax for Mozilla is exactly the same except for the vendor prefix. Now, the value before the slash will represent the horizontal radius measuring from the corner. The larger the first value is, the wider the curve will appear. The second value is the vertical height of the radius. The larger the second value is, the taller the curve will appear. Now, if we switch back to our browsers, we can see that the border radii are no longer perfectly round, and that they have taken on a more oblong shape. And here's what it looks like in Firefox. Now, this trick will work in Chrome and Firefox, but it does not currently work in the latest release of Safari. Now that you know how border radius works, let's take a look at some more practical tips to keep in mind when using border radius. First, I want to show you one of my favorite tricks. Here we have our same example div as before without any styling applied. Now, in our style sheet, we can apply a border radius, and we'll set the border radius to a really high value. When we switch back to our browser and refresh the page, you can see that our 4-cornered div now looks like a circle. The reason for this is that we've curved our corners so much the radii end up intersecting one another. A nice way to use this might be to highlight a piece of text. You could put a border on your element and make the background color of the element the same as the element behind it. This will create a circle that you can use to lasso up important pieces of text or images. Now, there is a really cool example of this on the web that I'd like to show you. This animated map of the solar system was created entirely in CSS3. The planets are actually just boxes that have a high border radius value applied to them to the point that they look like circles. Pretty neat. Now, just as a point of style, it's difficult to say arbitrarily when you should use border radius and when you should not. Really, it depends on the context. What I say is, use it sparingly. Border radius is a very cool effect, so it's easy to overuse it and curve everything. Already there's lots of sites on the web that are very obviously using border radius because every box on their site has large rounded corners and they're just using it all over the place. Don't fall into this trap just because you want to show off your new border radius skills. Instead, you can actually do a lot to soften up the look of your site in a very subtle way. Instead of rounding off every corner on your site with curves, try to use border radius sparingly. So for example, when you apply a border radius, try applying a much lower value, like 10 pixels or even 5 pixels. Using border radius this way tends to make sites look and feel more natural. Finally, you probably noticed that I made no mention of Internet Explorer. That's because all current releases of IE do not support border radius at all. However, there is a platform preview of Internet Explorer 9 available now, and IE 9 will indeed offer support for border radius. If you target Google Chrome 5 or the platform preview of Internet Explorer 9, you can actually use the border radius property without any browser prefixes, like so. IE 9 is expected to be released in 2011. So, as you've just seen, border radius is a very fast way to create rounded corners without the use of images, tables, or other markup hacks. It's a great tool for making boxy looking sites feel a lot more organic.